Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of the Concussion Nerds podcast. We're just going to dive right into it today, I think. Today's topic is the science of hope. And I actually did some reading before this episode, but we're talking about this because I got another one of those stories. And if you follow me on social, if you've been in any of my groups that I do, if you've listened to this podcast before, you know that these stories, every time I hear them, fire me up. Or in this case, make me have to pause and take a breath so that I don't react, right? And those are the stories that, if you're a clinician treating persistent concussion, you have most definitely heard from somebody who sits in front of you if you are not their first provider. This is one of those stories who, if you're listening to this podcast and you're on a healing journey, you've potentially experienced this. And that is that moment when you feel like hope has been extinguished. It's that moment that a specialist or a provider or your therapist looks at you and goes, "This is your new normal. You just need to learn to live with it." Or they instill further shame-based language of you should have been better by now. You should be doing your exercises more. You should. And I'm going to say sometimes I'll give providers the benefit of the doubt if they don't realize the words they're saying and what that instills in the person. But when you are sitting there in front of someone and you hear these words, it's like that flame that was keeping you going just had water doused on it. And then what? When you feel like hope has been extinguished, when you have been fighting this battle, when you have been persevering, when you have been pushing, when you have been doing the things that you know to do, and all of a sudden someone says, "Nope, it's not good enough. This is as good as it's going to be, and this is how you need to learn to live." I'm going to tell you right now that's unfreaking acceptable. It's unacceptable. And if you are listening to this and you are a provider, know that that is not how we should be supporting our clients. Telling somebody that this is your new normal and this is the way it has to be, that's telling somebody that nothing you do, nothing in the context of your life is going to help you foster positive change in your life. That's what that's saying. That you are stuck exactly as you are today and nothing's ever going to change. That's what that sentence gets interpreted as. Now imagine if somebody said that to you. Imagine if someone said to you, who you are today is your new normal and this is how you're going to be for the rest of your life. Oh, but we do it to our clients. So I encourage you, if you're working with somebody and you have exhausted your knowledge base of what you can do to help them move forward, that's okay. That's okay. But acknowledge that that's what it is. And have that conversation with your client without extinguishing hope. We can instill hope without being the person to do the therapy or to do the intervention or to do the rehab. We're going to talk about the science of hope and what it looks like and what it actually is. And in this place of healthcare, we should be instillers of hope, not extinguishers of it. Anytime I hear the story of someone's literally hope being extinguished or being blamed for the reason their care hasn't progressed, it just makes me irate. So if you're on a healing journey and you're listening to this, please do not give up hope. And if you've seen a specialist or you've seen a provider that truly says, this is as good as it's going to get, this is your new normal, and you need to just learn to live with it, don't accept that as this is your final step. Do not accept that as you're not going to continue to shift and change and grow in life. Yes, it might look different, but that doesn't mean the person you are today is who you always have to be, should you choose to continue to change. So there is this science of hope, right? And when you start to read into a little bit of the psychology space, when you look at what the science of hope is, it says that hope presents as both a desire and a mindset that plays an important role in the concept of human motivation and agency. Hope itself is a positive emotion, but it's one of those positive emotions that typically requires an experience of uncertainty or negativity or hardship to spark hope, right? Ultimately, it involves a person's desire to realize a positive outcome. You hear me talk about the silver linings, right? What is the silver lining? What is the thing that I can look forward to that's come out of this crappy situation, right? What better circumstance of uncertainty than experiencing a concussion and no one's able to tell you an exact timeline of how long it's going to take you to heal. No one's going to be able to tell you a black and white path of here's what you have to do, because it's a little bit different for everybody. Yes, absolutely. In that acute phase, we know the things we want to be implementing sooner to help you heal faster. But we don't have a crystal ball, right? And neither do you. And you hear me talk about it all the time. Concussion is like we're playing in the gray because there's so many factors that make you the human that you are. And when you work with someone with concussion in a clinic, you're not just dealing with the concussion. You're working with the person. Hope is a way of thinking that supports commitment, motivation, and progress. Now, I am completely blanking on the name of the person who created the science of hope theory. It is a thing. You can Google it. But they said that there's two ways of thinking, two types of thinking that make up this mindset of hope. And I can tell you where I see one of them always strong with someone who's on a persistent concussion journey. And there's one of them that's weak. And when you hear me explain them, you'll understand why one of them is the weaker one. And that's where people like me, with the consults that I do, or other clinicians come into the space to help you with this other way of thinking. So again, clinicians, that we can be instillers of hope, not extinguishers of hope. So here's the two ways of thinking that make up the actual science of hope. Number one is agency thinking, right? So this is the general and lasting belief that you will achieve your goal, right? It's the general thought that even though you're on this concussion journey, you know there's a better outcome at the end. You know that this can improve. That is that. This is the motivation part of hope. This is the part that inspires you to engage in that goal-oriented action, right? So this would be the part of hope that helps you, motivates you to remain consistent. Because remember, sometimes motivation isn't going to be present every day. But this is the piece of hope that motivates you to be consistent and motivates you to be disciplined in the behaviors and the actions that we know can help continue to move you on a forward path. Agency thinking is the part of hope that gives you the confidence to not be deterred when you experience that setback. This is the part that shows up when you're in that flare up. If you're on a healing journey and it feels like it's beating you down, that you're like, I got this. I will come through this and I will come out the other end. This is the piece as a clinician that when you're sitting there staring at the chart of your new assessment and you're seeing findings in every single system and you're hearing about the stresses in their life at the same time and you're feeling the emotional impact and you're looking at this going, I can get this person through this. Right? So this is the agency thinking, the lasting belief that you will come through this, the lasting belief that you will achieve those goals, even in the face of setback. This part, this piece of the thinking, for the people that I get the pleasure of working with, this is the piece that's strong. Right? Again, recognizing that yes, in my clinic, we work with acute concussion clients, but the people that fly into Nanaimo to come work with me are individuals who've been on this journey for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years. This hope is still burning strong in them, or it's been reactivated. We'll talk about that in a minute. Now, this other way of thinking, or this other way of thinking in the science of hope theory, is called pathway thinking. This is the area that's typically not as strong, and you're going to understand why right away as soon as I read this. Pathway thinking is the thinking about the routes or the strategies someone will use to reach those goals, right? This is where you identify and can commit to a course of action. But that you can also be flexible to come up with new pathways, new courses of actions if you encounter roadblocks. Now, just hearing that, this is basically saying this is the part of the science of hope part. That's the plan. This is the detailed part, right? This is the agency thinking is the big vision. I am hopeful. I know I can do this. I got this. That's the big thinking vision piece. The pathway piece is the detail. Here's how I'm going to do this. Here's the pathway I'm going to take. Small steps within my capacity that challenge me just slightly outside of my comfort zone so that I can take these steps forward. But this is what those steps are. So you can appreciate, well, when you're on a concussion journey, this is one of the hardest parts because you don't always know what those steps are. This is the piece where hopefully working with a clinician, and as a clinician, when we are trying to instill hope into our clients, we can support them with that messaging and that message of this will get better. This is not the way like things have to be. But then truly we support them in building the course of action to help move them through. And so this question actually for clinicians is when you're building your treatment plans and you're outlining your treatment plans for clients, do you sit down and explain it to them? We're working on ABC because of DEF, which will help you do EFG. Right? Do you sit down and have those conversations so that people understand when you're working on breathing or when you're working on single ocular motor movements or when you're working on why they're turning their head to a certain pace? How does that piece link into the big plan and the big vision? And I think sometimes as clinicians, we have the plan in our head and we know what we're doing. And we don't always, myself included, don't always do the most amazing job at translating that back to our client. So they just feel like they're doing these silly things, because I've heard this more than once. They feel like they're doing these silly things that aren't at all addressing what they said they wanted to come to you for. But this is where you get to support them in this hope process because you're helping build the pathway. We have to crawl before we walk. We have to walk before we run. Right? And so everything has a kind of order that we want to be addressing it through. And so sometimes it's our job, I'm going to say all the time, it's our job when we are working with a client to help them see the pathway more clearly so that they can continue to move towards it. What are the benefits of feeling hope? Okay, well, let's talk about when we don't feel hope. Right? When you feel like that hope has been squashed, you feel a little stuck. This is where depression can start to kick in. This is where apathy can start to kick in. You feel like no matter what you do, what's the purpose? Is there a point? Right? Versus the benefits of hope. Hope promotes happiness. Having hope helps give you meaning to things, to actions. Improves life satisfaction, relationships, that feeling and that sense of belonging. Hope benefits your mental health, right? It helps promote with coping strategies during loss and in chronic stress or chronic health scenarios. Helps you build resilience. It can benefit your physical health, right? We said hope is one of those things that helps give you that motivation for behavior change, for actions, for adjustment. So how do we start just instilling hope in ourselves now? So step number one, I'd say, is if you're struggling to find hope, you want to find a community or a podcast or a person that helps you see that there's the potential for a different outcome. Because sometimes it's hard to see that outcome for ourselves when we've been stuck in a place for a while. So are you digesting content or listening to content that shows you that there is a different possibility available to you? That's number one. Number two, set micro goals. And now by micro, I literally mean like micro. Like what could I achieve in the next 10 minutes? Right? It starts to give you that sense of accomplishment. Even if that thing is, I'm going to walk to my kitchen, whatever it is. Expressing gratitude. And I know that I've talked about this a lot, and you might be tired of hearing about it, but you hear about it because it serves a purpose, right? You hear about it because there's science around gratitude journaling and how it supports our mental health, how it supports decreased pain, right? It supports so many things. And so gratitude, here's the thing. It needs to be sincere. So saying, I am grateful for my home. I mean, I am, don't get me wrong. But like, that's a big thing. And so what I would challenge you to do is find the little things. I am grateful for the feel of my son's arms wrapped around my neck as he gave me a hug before he went to school this morning. Oh no, here's the one from today. Here's the one from today, my friends. My son is 10 years old. We've reached the point where we do school drop-off in this roundabout thing. No hugs or kisses goodbye in the car anymore. Nope, 10-year-old boy, not allowed. And once the doors open, there's no I love you, mom. Too cool. Holy crap, was I grateful for this morning. It's raining. It's kind of gross. Go into the roundabout, pull into our usual spot. Hudson gets his jacket on, gets all his stuff on. I'm like, hey, dude, I'll see you after school. I'll pick you up at Kids Co. He's like, hey. And he opens his car door and he gets out. And I now, whether he says it back or not, I always say, love you, buddy. I'll see you later. And this morning, if you're watching this video, I'm like bouncing up and down. This morning, he looks at me and he's like, I love you, mom. And I was like, oh, I love you with the door open while he's standing outside. Oh my goodness. I was so grateful for that moment. My smile lit up, felt all warm. I was grateful for that moment. So I encourage you to find the little things. Maybe it's just grateful for the softness of the blanket against your skin. But say it or journal it and take that next step to when you think about that thing that you're saying you're grateful for, how does that feel in your body? How does that feel? And I encourage you to do this every single day. Every day. I don't care when in the day you do it, but I encourage you to do it every day. The third way we can start to find hope is simply by practicing kindness, finding ways to be kind. Because I don't know about you, and I hope you've experienced this, but when you're kind to somebody else, it feels good for you too. It is a positive feedback loop, my friends. You're kind to someone, you generate feel good emotions in them, and it feels good to you to be nice to somebody else. That's the most beautiful feedback loop in the world. I went grocery shopping the other day, and I pull up to park my car, and I play my music, sometimes a little too loudly, just fine. So I was probably singing at the top of my lungs. And I get out of my car, and there's an older gentleman in the car, sitting in the car next to me with his window down. And he just kind of looks at me, and he just kind of smiles. And I could have chosen in that moment to ignore him, grab my stuff out of the car, and head into the grocery store. But instead, I looked at him and I just said, "Hi there. Hope you're having a great day." And he was like, "Thank you. You too." And I went grocery shopping. I come back out. He's still in the car. I was faster, clearly, than the driver of his vehicle. And he says to me, he's like, "Do you have any money left?" As in, grocery shopping is ridiculously expensive. And I looked at him, I'm like, "I got a little bit, but we'll see how it goes." Then he asked me, he's like, it just sparks conversation. He's like, "What kind of car is that?" So I told him. He's like, "That looks pretty neat." I'm like, honestly, I love her. I call her Blue because she's blue. And he's like, "Huh." And I said, "You have a fabulous day, sir." And he was just like, "You too, ma'am." And then I got in my car and drove away. A very non-crazy interaction, but he was smiling and I was smiling, and it just felt good. And so the more we can create these positive feel-good feelings, the more it will kind of feed into, and ideally I instill and inspire hope. And then when you surround yourself with people, if you can't see that the outcome can be different, then you find somebody who shows you that it can. If you're a clinician and you're struggling to figure out how to help your clients move forward with all the information, then you find a place that shows you it can be different, that shows you that you can show up and love your job, and that passion then spills over into your clients, that shows you there's a different approach and a different way to be so that you can live the work-life balance. I always say the same, like, I don't believe in the word balance, I like the word harmony. So that you can have the work-life harmony that fills your cup so that you're not feeling burnt out at the end of the day. Sometimes we need an inspiration person to help us find the hope again. But please don't be the person that is extinguishing the hope in our clients. Because every time I get the story of the experience of being discharged from my client care because there's no hope left, breaks my heart. And then just lights the fire in my stomach to keep going. Be the igniter of hope. Do not be the extinguisher of it. Hope is an incredibly powerful emotion. And as we just learned, a mindset that serves our clients on this healing journey and serves you as a clinician, if you're a clinician listening to this, serves us as clinicians to continue to show up in our day-to-day life too. All right, my friends, like every week, and I don't know if I say this enough, so I'm going to say it again. Here at Concussion Nerds, we are here to set, and I mean set, a new standard for concussion care around the world. Because the current standard that exists is just not good enough. Thank you for tuning in, and I will be back next week. Until then, my friends, take care. that's today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you liked what you heard, give us a like, give us a share, give us a tag on Instagram, and please never hesitate to reach out. We love communicating and connecting with you. Until next week, my friends, have a marvelous day.